Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar on this virtual side event for the High-Level Political Forum. We're very excited to be launching the CCAC Technology and Economic Assessment panel today, our agriculture brief. And we have a very esteemed panel with us today. So I will do brief introductions for our panelists and then pass it over to our first presenter to begin. So today we have joining us Kaveh Zahedi from FAO, who will be giving opening remarks, as well as Aimable Uizeye from FAO. We also have Bernard Kamoro from Kenya giving a country perspective, and finally Fiona Flinton from the International Livestock Research Institute for closing remarks. And with that, I'd like to pass it to Kaveh to give opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gregory. I hope you can hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up if all's coming through. Fabulous. No, really, thank you very much. And dear friends, excellencies, the distinguished speakers, participants, colleagues, it really is delightful to welcome you to this virtual side event on fast solutions in the agriculture sector that will benefit the agriculture sector. Our event today is co-organized, of course, by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, the CCAC, with Brazil, Ireland, Kenya, Senegal, Vietnam, and ourselves at the Food and Agriculture Organization. Let me, of course, start by thanking CCAC and our members for championing all this innovation, all the technological solutions to reduce short-lived climate pollutants like methane from agriculture. Of course, you know, from our side, we're fully aware that for many countries, the story of climate and agriculture is as much about building resilience and adaptation as it is about mitigation. But we also know that reducing SLCPs brings both global and local benefits for agriculture. And I think that's what we're going to explore today, because this event, this side event, aims to showcase many of these solutions through the existing work that's going on in agriculture and explore how all these many solutions that have been tested can be disseminated, can be scaled up at the farm level through extension services and through other forms of agriculture-based payment schemes. Of course, on our side at the FAO, we really appreciate the efforts of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition to develop, to disseminate these scalable solutions in agriculture, especially with the launch of the brief on scaling underfinanced SLCP mitigation solutions, which is all about driving innovation, driving technology in the agriculture sector. Let me acknowledge that this brief was developed under the leadership of Ireland and Senegal as the co-chairs of the CCAC's new technology and economic assessment panel, the CCAC-TEAP. Now, the CCAC's Technology and Economic Assessment Panel was established and really to promote exactly this, innovative and underfinanced measures and technologies that can help us reduce SLCPs in agriculture. And I guess we very much modeled this on the success of the Montreal Protocol's Technology and Economic Assessment Panel. And we do hope to replicate the many successes we've seen coming from that side of the multilateral field. Now, of course, from our side, FAO and the CCAC have a long history of partnership, especially around the issue of addressing methane emissions in livestock, in rice systems. Through the work that we've done the assessments together, the policy formulation, the methane roadmaps, and of course, implementation of mitigation measures at the country level, where of course it counts. Now, addressing short-lived climate pollutants in agriculture is very much really part of our core business in FAO. It's really well aligned with what we're meant to do from our strategic framework in terms of supporting members to transform agri-food systems, make them more sustainable, more resilient, more inclusive. And our joint work with the CCAC and on this agenda is also very much a part of the implementation of the FAO's strategy on climate change that the members adopted for themselves in 2022, and it runs for a 10-year period. It really provides a sort of a comprehensive framework for us to support our members to achieve the Paris Agreement goals, with a fundamental priority to safeguarding food security and ending hunger. And none of that, the Paris Agreement, safeguarding food security and ending hunger, can be done without considering short-lived climate pollutants. And really guided by sort of that impetus that the strategy has given us, we continue to support countries, our members, all the agricultural stakeholders that we work with to implement technical and innovative solutions and policies that can help us sort of raise our ambitions of climate change adaptation, ambitions in terms of climate change mitigation, and basically identifying solutions that can bring us multiple benefits. And that really is what sort of almost the genesis of the CCAC itself, to bring those solutions with multiple benefits. Just to take an example, the most feasible technological solutions for abating methane in the livestock sector can also help us to increase productivity, so bringing multiple benefits with single solutions. While climate-smart livestock practices to increase livestock productivity, we've known about them for a long time, for decades, farmers are still facing the social and economic barriers to their implementation. And so the brief that has been developed focuses on two of the emerging technologies that could significantly reduce adoption barriers for livestock keepers, the digital agricultural extension services and the results payments. And you're going to hear about both of these, but really it is about how we find solutions that work across multiple aims, across multiple goals that countries have set themselves in climate and development. Similarly, digital agricultural extension services that we're going to hear more about, they're going to play a crucial role in facilitating knowledge transfer, data collection, and really catalyzing the adoption of practices and feeding strategies that we know can improve productivities. And this kind of service can enable real-time support, data analytics, help farmers adopt methane abating practices more effectively. Again, you get multiple solutions in one. And finally, just a final sort of example of where we hope to see this coming together of the multiple agendas of solutions with multiple benefits is where we work with partners and members in raising ambitions of their climate commitments, especially through the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, right? The nationally determined contributions that very much consider the commitments made by over 150 countries to reduce methane under the global methane pledge, but they go beyond that, right? How can we raise the ambition of the next generation of NDCs so that agri-food system solutions are fully hardwired into those plans on the mitigation, on the adaptation side? And again, SLCPs have to be a big part of that. To do all of this, of course, we continue to provide capacity building programs to work with enhanced transparency. These are all the pathways really of helping countries to understand, to apply the solutions and to raise their ambitions. And I guess all of this is a very long-winded way of saying, please count on FAO. Please count on our full support for the CCAC and for all the partners who've gathered here and beyond in identifying and implementing solutions in the agriculture sector that can help deliver, of course, better production, better nutrition, better environment, and as we say, better lives. So with that, again, thank you for joining us today, and back to you.
Thank you, Kaveh. Wonderful to have FAO's support and to have your wonderful opening remarks. Thank you so much. Kaveh is the Director of the Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment at the Food and Agriculture Organization, and it's wonderful to have your support as well as Aimable, who will be presenting after me, but I'll be giving an overview of the TEAP brief. And so sharing my slides now. So thank you everyone again for joining us today. And as I mentioned earlier, and as Kaveh noted in his remarks, this webinar is to launch the Technology and Economic Assessment Panel Agriculture Brief. To give a little bit of an overview of the CCAC, we are a global voluntary partnership of committed countries and organizations dedicated to addressing short-lived climate pollutants. And we have 88 country partners, as well as 96 non-state partners, including organizations such as the Food and Agriculture Organization. Our focus on short-lived climate pollutants is in order to really promote strong action on climate change in the short and medium term. By taking early action on short-lived climate pollutants such as methane, black carbon, and hydrofluorocarbons, we're able to significantly reduce the impact of climate change in the short term. And combined with action on long-lived climate pollutants like CO2, we can have a much stronger impact in terms of reducing the warming trajectory in the near and long-term future. So by taking early action through the Global Methane Pledge, for example, we're able to avoid 0.6 degrees of warming, avoid 2.4 million premature deaths annually from outdoor air pollution caused by black carbon and tropospheric ozone formation from methane, able to avoid 52 million tons of crop losses from 4 major staples per year, things like corn, rice, wheat. And we're also able to meet sustainable development goals across various different SDGs related to air quality, health, and food security. And methane in particular from agriculture is a major contributor to emissions. And about 42% of methane emissions come from agriculture, with enteric fermentation and manure management being two major components, with 30% from enteric fermentation and 4% from manure management, and an additional 8 to 10% from rice production. So the goal of the Technology and Economic Assessment Panel was to look at those emissions, especially from enteric fermentation, and find ways to reduce in the short term emissions from those sources. We're building on the success of the Technology and Economic Assessment Panel in the Montreal Protocol, where it has been very successful at reducing ozone-forming pollutants, such as hydrofluorocarbons. And the aim is to share knowledge about promising and underfinanced methane and short-lived climate pollutant mitigation measures. And the time frame is to really focus on technologies with commercial potential within the next 1 to 5 years. And again, the co-leads of the CCAC-TEAP are Senegal and Ireland. So we've launched 2 briefs to promote these technologies. One in the waste sector, looking at black soldier flies and biocovers for landfills, as well as now this agriculture brief focusing on digital agricultural extension services and results-based payments in the agriculture sector to reduce emissions from enteric fermentation. And so what we discovered when we looked into different opportunities to reduce emissions from livestock, the main opportunities in the short term are productivity improvements. Things like animal breeding, selecting for traits such as animal reproduction, animal health, and feed efficiency. Looking at feed management and forages, increasing feeding levels for livestock, for example, storing forages and processing them for better digestibility for the cattle, increasing the forage digestibility, and then also looking at animal health, things like disease vaccination, parasite control, and biosecurity controls on farms to reduce disease transmission through poor hygiene. So the question we came across with this work is, how do we scale these productivity improvements? They've existed as solutions for increasing livestock productivity for decades. There should be an economic incentive for farmers to pursue those measures, but there are multiple barriers that farmers face in adopting those measures. And so we narrowed down opportunities to reduce those barriers as digital agricultural extension services and results-based payments. In the case of digital agricultural extension services, they provide real-time support to farmers and data analytics to help them have the knowledge to make the improvements to their production practices that they need. These extension services also facilitate knowledge transfer to improve livestock productivity and reduce emissions intensity from production. And so by providing the information to the farmers directly through phones and other digital technologies, we're able to bring that information to the farmers much more quickly than through other forms of communication, such as direct visits from extension agents and mailing communications and so forth. The other option of results-based payments provides financial incentives aligned with emission reduction outcomes to the farmers and drive sustainable intensification in agriculture, enhancing productivity while reducing emissions intensity. And so I'll give some examples for each of these. So in Kenya, for example, there is a new app, or has been around for a couple of years now, called iCow, that serves over 1.6 million smallholder farms through SMS, and it provides advice on production, genetics, and genomics tailored to smallholders' unique production systems. So it really focuses on those breeding aspects to increase the productivity of livestock in Kenya. And by increasing that productivity, it reduces the emissions intensity of methane. So the livestock produce more meat, more dairy per head, and reduce the emissions per kilogram of meat and dairy produced. Similarly, UC Davis has launched an initiative called Global Farm Animals Ration Programs, Global FARP, that works in 16 countries across Africa and Asia. Global FARP offers smallholders ration programs in their local languages and optimizes least cost rations using local feeds. So it helps farmers develop the appropriate feed rations for their livestock to increase the productivity of the livestock, doing so within the context of their local agroecological production system and within their local language. And the goal, again, is to increase productivity and reduce the methane intensity of production. Looking at results-based payments, the Ag Results Tanzania Dairy Productivity Challenge was able to increase productivity significantly by focusing on 4 high-quality inputs: parasite control, nutritious feed, vaccines, and artificial insemination. This 4-year, almost $5 million prize competition aimed to increase dairy productivity by linking the private sector input suppliers to the smallholder farmers. So the providers of the parasite control, the feed, the vaccines, and the artificial insemination to be able to link those providers to the smallholders and increase the productivity of their livestock production. This strengthened value chain relationships between dairy producers and the formal dairy sector. So bringing more of the smallholders into the formal dairy sector and the dairy market to be able to market their products to a larger audience and market. This again, increases productivity. And while the dairy productivity challenge didn't explicitly have an emissions focus, these productivity increases also would reduce the emissions intensity of production and could be scaled in other contexts around the world to be able to show how these improvements to production can also have benefits for the climate. And to give a little bit more of a background in terms of how this works, the Ag Results Ag Results Challenge provided bundles of payments to the input providers based on how many inputs they were able to provide to the smallholders. So if they were able to provide 2 of these inputs, let's say parasite control and vaccine, they would receive a 20% bonus. If they were able to provide all 4, parasite control, nutritious feed, vaccines, and artificial insemination, it would lead to a 60% bonus. So by tiering these bonuses, it was able to provide an incentive to the input providers to provide better packages of inputs to the smallholders. And these payments were able to transform the dairy sector more broadly, where these short-term subsidies were no longer needed, and these practices proved a financial benefit to both the input providers and the farmers to be able to maintain their impact over the long term once the payments were finished. So thank you again for joining us today. And with that, I will pass it off to Aimable Uizeye, who is a livestock policy officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization, to give a little bit more background on the important work FAO has been doing on productivity improvements in livestock and the opportunities for smallholders to be able to make these improvements in their production. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I hope you can hear me. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to provide this presentation. I will focus mainly on research and innovation on livestock emissions and mitigation options, especially following the publication last year of what we call the FAO methane report, which is a report focusing on methane emissions from livestock and life systems. So as a quick background, this presentation will be to highlight mainly different strategies to reduce emissions while improving the productivity of livestock systems. And I will discuss those solutions, mainly focusing on enteric fermentation and also manure management. So the report is organized in 4 parts. Mainly, the first part discusses the sources and the sink of methane emissions from food and agriculture. The second part on quantification of methane emissions. Then we have a very comprehensive chapter on mitigation of methane emissions, and final chapter discussing the metrics to quantify the impact of methane on climate. I won't go in all the details of the report. I will focus mainly on the matter of today, which are more related to the solutions that we can apply at farm level to reduce emissions. This report has been developed by 54 scientists from all regions of the world, and it was under the Livestock Environmental Assessment and Performance Partnership. I think Greg already mentioned this, but it's worth repeating it. So agriculture is a large contributor to methane emissions, mainly through three sources: enteric fermentation, manure management, and rice production. And all those 3 processes, 3 stages mainly, are related to the anaerobic digestion. So mainly is related to how certain type of microbes synthesize methane through in an anaerobic environment. We have also other sources of methane, especially from natural sources that are not anthropogenic, but it's important also to keep in mind that open burning and wetlands are also large contributor to methane in atmosphere. So looking at FAO work, we have analyzed the greenhouse gas emissions in the livestock sector globally, looking at the life cycle, so looking at the input that are required to produce feed production, animal production, and the processing. And you can see that overall, livestock contribute about 6.2 gigaton of CO2 equivalent, which include 54%. So 54% of those emissions are in the form of methane, mainly from enteric fermentation and manure management. If we look closely in what is happening on farm, we can say that almost half of emissions from livestock sector are happening on farm, and mainly 2.9 gigaton are related to enteric methane. So meaning that they are happening within the stomach and the lumen of the cow or the ruminant, other ruminant. So this is important. That's why in order to reduce those emissions, especially if we want to tackle the 78% of emissions that are happening on farm, we need to deal with how we feed animals and how we manage livestock, especially ruminant globally. So before going into the details on mitigation, it's important to remind how do we measure methane. So we published in the report, but also in this scientific publication, the different type of methods used. And those methods are mainly available so far at farm level. Sorry, at research level. So a few of those methods can be applicable at farm level, simply because they require some technicality to use them. However, what you can say is that it's important that we understand how the different breeds, and the different production systems of livestock, especially ruminant, produce methane, which can help to improve the country emission factors, as well as understanding the differences between animals, special animal species, but also animal breeds in terms of emissions production. So when it comes to the mitigation strategies, so we have many mitigation strategies that are explored, but here I'm going to focus on a few of them that I believe are very relevant. So the first one is the matter of today. So how do we increase animal productivity? So to better read this table, so I will talking about a strategy, and the first part here is how that strategy may increase or decrease what we call the absolute emissions. So are the total emissions or the methane yield, which is the methane emissions per day, or we refer to as emission factor. And the second part is how that strategy would decrease or increase the emission intensity. So that's the level for total emissions divided by the product. In the third column here, what you have here is the effect on other sources of emissions. These can be upstream emissions related, for example, on how feed is produced. It can also relate to how emissions are produced in manure. And then obviously the effect on productivity, that's the main discussion today. And I will be talking about the risks associated with that, and of course the other barriers. So starting to this, increasing productivity is seen as an incentive for farmers to take actions, especially to implement climate smart livestock practices that can reduce methane emissions. So, however, we have seen that this approach will decrease the emission intensity, but will tend to increase the overall emissions because farmers do see this as an incentive to expand the production. That's why beside this approach, we need other solutions. So the second solution is mainly genetics. So now through genetic, you can select animals that can reduce emissions with ability to produce, to decrease methane yield. So far, this is still under research. Those animals are not yet available for farmers. However, this can be one of the future solutions that could be easily scalable, especially that the breeding and also the genetic improvement techniques has been well diffused around the world. We know that feeding concentrates or compounded feed can reduce emission intensity, but will tend to increase productivity while increase other source of emissions. So overall, we may tend to increase the overall emissions. And this, we need to look at always how that solutions is applicable, so it could be applied in addition to other solutions that I'm going to present. So the other solution that's very important is how we use lipid supplementation. This is very interesting because we can reduce emissions from both methane yield and methane intensity, but we need to see how those lipids are produced to avoid increasing upstream emissions. Improving forage digestibility, I think this is really an easy solution, and in a sense, even easy to understand because digestibility is important. If you see even how we estimate emissions with all the IPCC methodologies, digestibility is one of the drivers of methane emissions. So therefore, if we can increase digestibility, we can easily reduce emissions and also increase productivity because most of the part of undigestible forage will be converted into a volatile fat acids that are beneficial to the productivity of the animals. So we can also improve feed. Mainly, I will just go through this quickly. They're using legumes or high starch forage, improving pasture or conservation of the forage. So this those has different, let's say, effect on methane. But what I can say overall is that they tend to reduce emissions slightly, not much, but they have a huge impact on productivity. So therefore, that's why we need other solutions that maybe are more have a high potential. Some of those solutions is like a TRINOP, the nitrooxypropanol, which is one of the feed additives that is currently under regulatory approval. It has been approved in many countries. It has the potential to reduce emission by 30%, and it will reduce both methane yield, so meaning absolute emissions, as well as emission intensity. And looking at the safety, so the product is safe to utilize, and it can also have an impact on animal productivity if combined with other solutions that I have just mentioned. We have also hope that asparagopsis, let's say product special bromoform, will be also available in the future on markets, especially that the lead seaweed and also the synthesized bromoform do have high impact in terms of emission reduction. Can inhibit up to 90% of methane emissions. However, it has some, let's say, risks associated with it, especially in terms of the safety of animals, human health, or environment. Therefore, we are following very closely the development on the research side to understand better how this will be available broadly for the farmers. I think one of the technique that is used by many farmers, sometimes they don't see or know how to measure the impact of how they use it, is the tannins. Because we have many foliage that are already rich in tannins that farmers do apply as legumes. And those have a tremendous impact in terms of emission reduction, both in intensity and also absolute emissions. So finally, when we reduce emissions, of course, we need to understand that we are inhibiting let's say, a reaction that is important in terms of removing hydrogen ions from lumen. So therefore, we need an alternative receptor. So it's important that one of the alternative receptors that are used is nitrate, which can help to absorb, let's say, the extra hydrogen ions. And this we have so far, all the studies show that using nitrate had an impact on feed intake, so it will decrease the feed intake. Therefore, it may reduce the productivity of the animals. We have other solutions. Once on the manure side, this is something that I think most of you are aware of in terms of using anaerobic digestate to produce energy. They are either widely used, like what we see in California, or at small scale. This picture here taken in Rwanda, where small scale farmers are using biogas to produce energy on farm energy, but also organic fertilizer for crop. So when it comes to the impact of the global warming, so methane has a particular, let's say, is a particular in nature because methane, as it has been mentioned, is a short-lived climate pollutant. Therefore, it disappears usually in the atmosphere once emitted in less than 12 years. So therefore, if we can have can take actions to reduce methane now, we may decrease our impact on the global warming. So unfortunately, not all the indicators or metrics used now are able to reflect this. So here is a very confusing graph, I think, for most of you, but let me explain quickly. So we have many indicators that are used. As you know, the global warming potential 100 is the indicator recommended by UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, for countries to report emissions. However, this indicator doesn't capture well the impact of a short-lived climate pollutant like methane. That's is reduced gradually in the atmosphere, is not cumulative gas. So that's why alternative indicators have been proposed to ensure that nature of methane is recognized. That's one of example of the global warming potential star that is used here. So if you can see, for instance, on this graph, you can see that if we project the emission up until 2100, we see that if you use global warming potential, the impact of a temperature would be higher as compared to if you measure the same impact using this alternative indicator, which is a global warming potential. So this is more complicated, but just to say that IPCC recognized the potential of the global warming potential star, but so far it is not yet recommended in as the main indicator for reporting. It can be used as an alternative indicator in addition to the global warming potential. So I want to finalize this presentation by saying something important. I think Kaveh touched base on that. It's the level of ambition of reducing emissions. So we are falling apart in terms of reducing emissions. So we need to raise our ambitions because the current trend in terms of climate action are kind of out of track. So therefore, this is an opportunity to continue to raise the awareness on what actions we should take to reduce emissions. So FAO is already supporting many countries. I think I want to go in the details here, as Kaveh already mentioned this in the opening remarks. But FAO is helping many countries with the support of CCAC to support the capacity building policy, especially in terms of building roadmap that are comprehensive and that are applicable in the production systems at country level. So this is very important, and I hope that we will continue to do this in the future. I want just to say that we need to understand how barriers to adopt technology or the challenges that farmers are facing we need to understand that, because some of the solutions being proposed under this brief are very useful in terms of adopting digital technology, but we need to go and understand how the technology transfer and the capacity building can help us especially to ensure that farmers adopt those solutions at scale. It's important to mention that investment are needed. So we need to invest in livestock. There is an opportunity, and livestock is part of the climate solution, as well as agri-food systems are part of the climate solution. Therefore, we need further investment to ensure that we can reach the target in terms of climate actions. On that, I want to thank you. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Aimable. Great to see, again, these important insights from FAO's report on methane from livestock and rice. And next, we have a presenter bringing in a country perspective on digital agricultural extension services. So very happy to have Bernard Komoro joining us from Kenya. He is the Head of Climate Change and Livestock Sustainability in Kenya's State Department for Livestock. So thank you again for joining, Bernard, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Gregory. I've been struggling to join in through the Teams, and I'm happy at least I've been able to join. And thanks also for the opportunity to make the presentation. Perhaps, I don't know whether I'll be able to share. Yes. Is it visible?
We can see your screen, and it's on your Gmail right now.
Oops. Okay. I think it's in the wrong. I was trying to. So I need to unshare first, I guess. Okay, let's see. I think you should be able to see it now.
Yes, now it's working.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, and thanks for the patience for me to join. I'm just going to share a very small perspective of what we have as the digital agriculture extension services and how they can actually be able to support our productivity targets in Kenya. I'll just give a few examples on where we are applying them, and probably also say how they're helping us transform the livestock subsector. So my name is Bernard Komoro. I work for the State Department for Livestock, as Gregory has said. As a way of introduction, I think for us, agriculture is very important. And this importance, if you look at it, is we can see it through the policies that are there, which are actually supporting the sector. But more importantly, most of the policies that we have and the strategies are emphasizing on the aspects of agricultural production and, of course, the issues around income growth, because agriculture basically in Kenya is about 29% of the GDP. Most of our farmers are smallholders, therefore the policy mainly targets productivity and income levels rising amongst the smallholder farmers. These policies that are sector specific are also supported by other policies which are outside the sector, that are also looking at what we can also leverage within the digital space that can also enhance our drive towards enhanced food and nutrition security. And one of them obviously is the issue around ICT. And for Kenya, agriculture is leveraging on ICT based on a number of things. You look at the Kenyan population, 90% approximately, we have 90% penetration in terms of smartphone use, which is quite high, I think, in Africa. And this therefore provides an opportunity for us to use agricultural technologies using that penetration to drive the issues around productivity. There are quite a number of services which are offered through this penetration. Currently, we have about 95 services, digital agricultural services. And if you look at comparing to African countries, I think we are almost double the nearest that is using this. So some of the supportive policies that I talked about, of course, in the digital space, most of the policies talk about the need to transform our economy using the digital opportunities. So you look at even the overarching national strategy, the Vision 2030, it talks about the need to have a digital transformation of the economy. So it starts from there. Specifically, we also have those policies that are targeted at digital technologies and support the use of digital technologies in Kenya. And those are the ones that I mentioned there. National Information and Communication Technology Policy is very clear about the application of digital policies. We have a national ICT 35 master plan, which came to an end and is being reviewed. We have a policy on remotely pilot aircraft systems, that is the drone technology, and also the use of drone technologies, for example, and the national broadband strategy, which are in place. And then we have a blueprint on Kenya digital economy that is also driving the application of digital technologies in various sectors, including the agriculture sector.
Sorry to interrupt you.
So yes.
The slides aren't moving for us. We only see the first slide. It might be because it's not in presenter mode.
It is in presenter mode, but every time I share it on presenter mode, they seem not to move. But let's see whether, does that show the movement?
Now it's moving, yep.
Yeah, so you'll have to allow me to use this other mode because the presenter mode is not moving.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so those are the things I talked about that are helping us in different sectors to apply digital technologies to transform our economy. So why do we need to have digital agriculture in Kenya's livestock, especially in the livestock subsector? Generally, if we look at our agricultural sector and specifically the livestock sector, the application of modern technologies, whether they're technical or those that relate to the digital technologies, are not available readily. For example, if I talk about a technology like total mixed rations for farmers, it's not widely applied. And therefore, when you talk about sustaining and increasing yields, it's still a problem. If you look at the aspect of financing within the households, there is generally very high or extreme financial constraints. Yeah, so you find that in terms of decision making at the household level, there's competing priorities between, for example, food purchases, school fees, and all that. And therefore, it means that for a farmer to be able to invest in a technology that can actually increase production, it becomes a bit of a problem. For them to actually put money into an extension agent coming to give that advice is still a problem. We still don't have financial access because of most of the infrastructure is physical. A person has to go to a bank, for example, to get these financial services, including issues around credit, loans, purchasing of inputs, or even sales and even savings. So even if people talk about Kenya being very advanced in this, we still have a bit of a challenge because there's a traditional thinking about if I need a financial service, I have to go to a bank directly. And of course, because of decline in extension services, so you find information services that will be able to support decision making at the household level in terms of farm management decisions. It's still a challenge. As we moved from the centralized extension system to the county, the transition hasn't still stabilized. Some of the counties are not employing, so we find extension services are still not adequate. And of course, Kenya has a very high youthful population, so we realize that there's an opportunity of using digital technologies to attract the youth into agriculture. So that's one of the bases. Okay, so if you look at the most common services that are offered digitally in Kenya, there are quite varied services. For example, we have those ones that deal with advisories, whether it is on production, whether it is on weather. So majority of the services that we are looking at are e-extension services at the production level. Of course, there are those that also look at digital financial inclusion. Also, others are looking at market linkage. Others looking at market intelligence. What is the pricing? How the price is moving during different seasons. And of course, we have a few that are also looking at issues around traceability, especially in the beef industry. So, but overall, e-extension services is the most common digital services that is offered in the agriculture sector. We have different service providers, both public and private, that are applying these tools, as we shall see shortly. And these services are both general in terms of, for example, it can be applied across all the nodes of the value chain, or it could be in one particular value chain, for example, inputs only. So the others that are offering e-extension services from the inputs, they go to the production, aggregation, and marketing, and beyond that also into issues around wholesaling and retail. But there are also those ones that are also looking at specific ones. But these are evolving over time. But if you look at the overall reach, some of the service providers of digital technologies in livestock talk about reaching almost 1.6 million farmers. We have about 4 million livestock farmers in Kenya, so that's quite a big number. Okay, so some of the categories of digital agriculture services in livestock, weather information services in Kenya. World Bank project through the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project developed what we call the Kenya Agricultural Platform, Kenya Agriculture Observatory Platform, which gives weather advisory services. And this is very critical and guides the production calendar of some of our farmers. And the information goes to the lowest level possible, the sub-county level. So if you are a farmer at a sub-county, gives you information about the rain, can also tell you about how the season is going to change in terms of the rainfall, and that can guide how you plan your feed production. There are also others that are offering financial services. MasterCard, for example, with the development partner called MercyCorps, is also funding agricultural financial acceleration program that is looking at how to have financial inclusion for smallholders. Production, USAID, with TechnoServe and Safaricom, which is really playing a big role. Also is providing digital agriculture solutions that are looking at productivity enhancements. Inputs, again, Safaricom is working to see how this can be done through e-voucher systems in Kenya. Examples of some of these, very briefly. One of the most successful one is a company called iCow, which is using ICTs, leveraging on ICTs and partnership to improve smallholder farmer prosperity. Basically, it works with the livestock farmers, but it has also diversified to other areas, such as soil health. So it's not just livestock, but looking at how do we also leverage on, for example, the manure from livestock to go into improving soil health. So it has several services. One is the broadcasting services, where it sends, for example, short messages to registered farmers, which could be daily, weekly, or even as an alert that tells them about what they actually need to do. For example, if a cow is due for heat, it can then be served at the right time. Of course, that goes also with the calendar services. It has a library where people can actually access education materials on specific topics. More importantly, this also uses the USSD, the short message services, to give that information. It has also a marketplace called iCow Soko, where people can actually meet as a market. And again, provide that e-extension service. They also provide a link with the extension service providers or technical experts that are then linked up with those ones who are registered. Another one is DigiCow, which is specifically looking at animal husbandry practices and animal breeding. In this case, a farmer would call, for example, or even write an SMS when a cow is on the hit. The AI service provider is notified, and then the cow is inseminated at the right time, and then the vet who inseminated then keeps the digital record. Why this is important? Then it means that you increase productivity. You don't. The calving interval is reduced to the required number of days, and therefore the loss in terms of production is avoided. But it also provides extension services on general and dairy husbandry to its registered farmers. It's not just the two are private, but also what we are seeing increasingly in some of the projects that we have within the public sector. I can specifically say about two projects. There's one which is called Kenya Livestock Commercialization Project, the government of Kenya, IFAD funded, which is also implementing an ICT-based approach to extension services, where they are developing an e-extension. They have developed actually and are implementing an e-extension model, where using the short message services as well as online services, to deliver extension messages to the beneficiaries, especially the youth who are operating who are also being targeted within the project. We have another project called de-risking, inclusion and value enhancement for pastoralists in the Horn of Africa region. It's for 4 countries, Kenya is included, which is leveraging also on frontier technologies, the use of satellite technology, to monitor the vegetation, but also ensuring that the farmers are also getting alerts on the changes in vegetation. It also uses e-extension to train the farmers on the benefits of the insurance, index-based livestock insurance, which is critical, and also about how to manage their livestock and improve their productivity. So it's both public and private sector applying these kind of technologies. Yeah, I just wanted to make this as broad as possible. So yes, so we have the digital technologies which are very useful in targeting certain aspects of our value chains in livestock sector, but we still have challenges in terms of how these technologies are being applied. For example, although we talk about digital literacy being very high in Kenya, we still have a challenge because our farmers on average age is about 56 years, which is quite high. Of course, the issues around data ownership is a big problem. The index-based livestock insurance program, the insurer is collecting data. So there are issues about data security and how that should be safeguarded, because some of it is quite sensitive and very personal. Of course, those who are developing these technologies are also quite few, although we say there are many, but they are not as many as desired, because most are concentrated mainly in the large cities where they are operating from. So I just wanted to say that as what we are doing in Kenya, very broadly, probably I'll answer specific questions that will arise. Otherwise, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bernard, for providing the Kenya example of all of the innovation happening both in terms of the policy level as well as the private sector investment in digital agricultural extension services, and also spotlighting some of those concerns that come along with these technologies, such as the data security, as well as the ability to implement these solutions in rural contexts where cellular data may not be readily available. So thank you again to all of our presenters. We have, for our closing, Fiona Flinton joining. She's a senior scientist at ILRI, specializing in pastoralism, livestock, and climate, land governance and tenure, participatory land use planning, participatory rangeland management, gender, and conflict resolution, and providing and joining from the International Livestock Research Institute. Thank you again for joining, Fiona, and looking forward to your remarks.
Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, evening, and morning, everyone. All protocols observed. Yeah, so as Greg said, I'm a senior scientist at ILRI and also lead of the CGIAR's research initiative on livestock and climate. So thank you everyone for a very interesting and enriching webinar. I and colleagues are currently writing the Breakthrough Agenda report's agriculture section, and the points raised here and discussed are very relevant for this. The Breakthrough Agenda process coordinates, prioritizes, enhances global cooperation to make clean technologies affordable and accessible in all regions by 2030. Since its launch, the Breakthrough Agenda has established an internationally recognized annual COP-centered collaborative process backed by 57 countries and by 100+ international initiatives that enhances global cooperation in 7 key sectors: power, road transport, steel, hydrogen, buildings, cement and concrete, and agriculture, covering over 60% of global emissions. In the 2024 Breakthrough Report Agriculture section, we, the CGIAR, will highlight the need for strengthening international collaboration to develop and share innovations that support the scaling of technologies with adaptation and mitigation benefits to all farmers and livestock producers, including in low to middle income countries. The TEAP, Technology and Economic Assessment Panel, is a key example of the type of global collaboration that is needed to develop and scale technologies. In the Breakthrough Report this year, we, the CGIAR, focus on 2 key areas: fertilizer and livestock enteric methane emissions. With the latter, we focus on low emission forages and methane inhibitors, with the former particularly relevant for both climate adaptation and mitigation benefits in terms of improving productivity. But a key bottleneck for scaling of technologies in all parts of the world is A, knowledge of technologies, and B, technical information and support for their application and use. And as we've heard today, the digital extension services can provide technical information to farmers and livestock producers, support knowledge transfer whilst also being a mechanism for monitoring use. A second key bottleneck we've identified in the writing of the Breakthrough Agenda report is for uptake of technologies across the board is the cost. So many of the technologies can directly reduce, particularly those that can directly reduce enteric methane emissions, increase the cost of production without increasing productivity, with the cost having to be borne by the farmer. Even where technologies and practices increase productivity, as we've heard, farmers need support to make the transition. Results-based payments can provide needed incentives and financial assistance covering the costs. And as we've heard, innovative initiatives like the AgResults Tanzania Dairy Productivity Challenges can help fill this funding gap, whilst also strengthening knowledge exchange and a sense of joint purpose. So to wind up, scaling up proven technologies and practices is crucial for achieving significant reductions in agriculture methane emissions. The Climate and Clean Air Coalition TEAP Agriculture Brief emphasises the importance of leveraging these measures, not only for climate mitigation, but also for enhancing food security, economic livelihoods, and overall resilience in the face of climate change for a more just transition. With that, I am very happy to close the webinar with congratulations to the Coalition for this global collaboration and for increasing access to the needed solutions for reducing livestock emissions with both climate adaptation and mitigation goals gains. Thank you to everyone who contributed.
Thank you so much for those remarks, Fiona, and thank you again to all of our presenters today. It's really wonderful to have so much strong support from our partners within CCAC and to be able to spotlight these solutions for the agriculture sector that work not only for our climate goals, but also for the livelihoods and economic and food security of the countries where we're working. So thank you again. And I noticed that there were many comments in the Q&A. I tried to answer some of the questions just now, but didn't have time to get to all of them. So apologies if I didn't get to your question, but very happy to continue this dialogue in the future. Please do reach out to any of us. I'm sure we'd all be happy to answer those questions that you have. So thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.